This is Sunrise, our top story. A historic blaze. Shock in New York as a baby is among 12 people killed in a fire at an apartment block in the Bronx.
Hold your families close and keep these families here in the Bronx in your prayers.
Britain is blasted by minus 12-degree weather and there are warnings of heavy snowfall. Apple apologises after admitting slowing down ageing iPhones. Naked bacon, the technological breakthrough which could cut the cancer risk from your fry-up.
Every cigarette you smoke causes poison from tar to enter your bloodstream and spread to every part of your body.
A new anti-smoking driver's latest figures show one person a minute is admitted to hospital in England because of it. Newly classified papers reveal how Margaret Thatcher dealt with the Queen, her successor, and a panda. And in sport, rain delays England's attempt to win the fourth Ashes test against Australia. Good morning, this is Sunrise. Thanks for joining us. At least 12 people have died and 4 others are fighting for their lives after a fire tore through an apartment block in the Bronx in New York. A baby was among those killed. Now, New York's mayor has described it as the worst fire in the city for a quarter of a century, while the fire commissioner said it's historic. They don't yet know what caused it, as our US correspondent Greg Milam now reports.
From the moment a fire was reported inside one first-floor flat, it took just an hour for the building to be engulfed.
The UK has endured one of the coldest nights of the year, with widespread freezing conditions and temperatures in the Scottish Highlands dropping to minus 12. With Scotland, the north of England and the East Midlands are now on alert for ice and snow, with disruption expected to road, rail and airports. So let's go live now to our reporter Fraser Maud, who's in York for us. And Fraser, it looks absolutely bitterly cold there.
It is indeed, yeah, I spoke to you.
OK, Fraser, thanks. We'll let you go and warm up with a coffee. But Naz is here to tell us a bit more about what to expect across the country. And Naz, some very, very low temperatures recorded overnight.
Yes, indeed. We had the second coldest night of the year so far, minus 12.3 degrees Celsius in Scotland. It didn't beat the coldest night, which was back on the 12th of December at minus 13, but very close to that. And despite what the values are, it was very cold overnight. Hence the fact that across parts of the north and east, it's still very cold. Temperatures are widely below freezing there. And as the rain and snow is, rain is moving its way northeastwards, it's hitting that cold air and readily turning to snow, much like we've experienced earlier in the week. Now, there are several warnings out. For parts of the southwest, there's a yellow warning for the strength of the winds that is pushing that rain along northeastwards through this morning. And there could be gusts there up to 70 miles per hour around exposed coasts. As you can see, yellow warnings in force as well for ice across central and eastern parts of England and also across the far northeast of Scotland. There's also warnings out for the risk of snow. Now, the yellow warning for snow also states there could be up to 15 centimetres, much like the amber warning, but the amber warning's more focused across parts of northern England, parts of the Midlands as well, where there could be up to 15 centimetres across the high ground quite widely, but to lower levels, 5 to 10 centimetres is also possible. Obviously, no surprises, that's going to cause some travel disruption as well. Now, it does clear quickly this morning. That's why the warning expires at around 11 a.m. But thereafter, it remains quite cold. Apart from the south, it will be mild. But across northern areas, still quite cold, and there will be blustery showers. Some of them will be wintry as well. So pretty treacherous this morning if you're travelling.
OK, Naz, thank you. Apple has apologised after facing criticism for admitting it deliberately slowed down some ageing iPhone models. Our reporter Lorna Shattuck is here with more details. And what exactly has it admitted to doing?
Well, for quite a long time, there was speculation among Apple customers online that perhaps the firm had deliberately built in a deliberate slowing down of some iPhones to try and force customers to upgrade. And indeed, last week, the company did come out and say, yes, some lithium-ion batteries do degrade over time. And as a result of that, last year, they tweaked some software in the iPhone to slow down the phone itself as well, to keep pace, as it were, with those batteries. But it's only now, a week later, that Apple has come out and actually apologised for that. It's put out a statement on its website saying, "We know some of you feel Apple has let you down. We apologise. Our customers' trust means everything to us, and we will never stop working to earn and maintain it." And Apple is, in fact, facing 8 different court cases in the US over this particular issue. It's now come out and said to try and put this right, it's going to reduce the cost of replacing an out-of-warranty battery from £58 to £21. That's for anyone with an iPhone 6 or later, and that's going to start in late January. And in addition to that, it also says early next year it's going to issue a software upgrade for the iPhone, which will allow you, if you are an iPhone customer, to keep an eye on your battery's performance and see the health of the iPhone battery. But still a lot of questions really among Apple customers, particularly if there is such an innocent explanation for this, and lots of experts say it does sound very reasonable. Why didn't they just come out and admit this at the time and save a lot of speculation online?
OK, Lorna, thank you. At least 15 people have been killed in a fire that broke out in a restaurant in Mumbai. More than 50 others have been taken to hospital in a serious condition. Drunk tanks could be rolled out across the NHS to ease the pressure on A&E departments, according to NHS England's chief executive. Health bosses will study how services cope with alcohol-related incidents this new year before deciding whether to make the facilities permanent. More than 7 million train passengers experienced serious delays this year as commuters prepare for a 3.4% fare rise next week. Analysis by Which found that passengers lost a total of 3.6 million hours due to significantly delayed trains in 2016 to 2017, while delays of at least half an hour attracted 7.2 million passengers. A woman found murdered in Finsbury Park in North London has been named by police as Juliana Tudos. She died as a result of stab wounds to the abdomen and a head injury. Police say she was of Russian and Greek origin and was last seen by friends at around 8 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Her body was discovered yesterday afternoon and her family, who are abroad, have been informed. Former professional footballer George Weah has won the presidential election in Liberia. Weah, who played for Chelsea and Manchester City and was once crowned World Footballer of the Year, won 61% of the vote in a runoff against the vice president. Weah will succeed Ellen Johnson Sirleaf as president next month. The government's toughening up its anti-terror laws. People who tip off terror suspects that are being investigated could now face much more severe punishments. A total of 9 terror-related offences will join a scheme whereby seemingly lenient sentences can be challenged and sent to the Court of Appeal.
So in the majority of cases, of course, the courts decide things properly, and this isn't a criticism of the judiciary. What we want to make sure is that we robustly, rigorously and consistently apply the full force of the law to punish, deter and disrupt all terrorist offences, not just those directly involved in the attacks, but those supporting or connected in other ways.
Now the dusty archives at Kew have been opened again, and this time declassified papers have shed more light on the private opinions of the former Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, from John Major's managing of the economy through to licence fee evasion and panda diplomacy. Well, joining us now with more on this is our senior political correspondent Robert Nisbet. And Robert, sounds fascinating. Tell us more.
Well, it is this time of year, isn't it, where we start to see these private papers be released, and the are not happy omens.
Not overly surprising. Fascinating stuff. Thanks for that, Robert. Now, bacon lovers will be pleased to hear that the cancer risk in their beloved British fry-up will be slashed next month thanks to a huge breakthrough in technology. Naked bacon will be the first of its kind to be made without the chemicals which are used to cure bacon, and they're said to be cancer-causing. Well, the new bacon will hit the supermarket shelves in January. Time now to take a look at the front pages, and the Express links the impending blast of winter weather to threats to people's health. The Mail reports that the number of prescriptions written for antidepressants has trebled in the last 15 years. So-called drunk tanks might soon be used to ease the strain of alcohol-related admissions to A&E departments. That's according to the newspaper. The Mirror leads with outrage over NHS hospital parking charges, which of course we covered yesterday. The Times reports that the country's best paid GP earns over £700,000 a year. Wow. While the Sun rejoices in the news that a new form of bacon has been produced, which is free of cancer-causing chemicals. The Telegraph quotes a Tory minister accusing Jeremy Corbyn of attempting to rig the next election by blocking changes to electoral rules. The Guardian says Facebook risks sanctions over alleged interference in the Brexit vote. The Financial Times reports that for the fourth year in a row, mergers and acquisitions around the world have exceeded $3 trillion. And the Star splashes with that momentous news that there'll be lots of drunk-fueled parties over the new year. That just in, of course, and breaking. Now, the health dangers of smoking have been established for years now, but despite fewer people taking up the habit, the pressure that it puts on the NHS is still enormous. The latest figures show that one person every minute is admitted to a hospital in England because of smoking-related problems. And now there's a new awareness campaign to try to tackle it. Sky's Olivia Kingsley has this report.
What cigarette do you smoke, Doctor?
In the 1940s, even doctors played a part in promoting cigarettes. Sky News.
It was a cause that Princess Diana championed towards the end of her life. In fact, it was 20 years ago exactly that she walked through a minefield in Angola. Well, now the International Development Secretary has announced the UK will extend its landmine clearing work to Angola, Iraq, Lebanon, Sudan, Syria and also Yemen. And the announcement is in response to the UK's public support of the Mine Advisory Group's Christmas appeal, which the government pledged to match. Well, joining me now is the International Development Minister, Alistair Burt. Very good morning to you. How widespread of a problem are landmines and how many people do we think could be affected worldwide?
Some 20 people a day are either killed or injured through landmines. That number has come down by 2/3 since 1999, since Princess Diana highlighted the problem and more countries got behind the Ottawa Treaty to ban the use of landmines. The United Kingdom was a signatory to that. And in addition to the amount of match aid that's been announced today, £100 million over the next 3 years was pledged by the United Kingdom to continue the work to clear mines from a variety of different countries in Africa and Asia. So the work is painstaking, it is done very bravely by those involved. It still involves a lot of people, some 60 million people still live in fear of landmines, but the work must go on, and today's announcement, I think, demonstrates both the commitment to the government and of the British people to removing landmines.
And how exactly will the money be used? Will we send in our own mine cleaning teams, or is it to educate local people about the risks?
It's a mixture. Yes, teams go out supported by groups like HALO, like Mines Advisory Group, who go and do the work. But also work is done to teach people about the dangers of landmines, and educative work is done in communities where people might be affected. We think over the next year the effort that's been announced today will help clear an area of some 20,000 football pitch equivalent, and also contact some 800,000 people and make sure they live in less fear of landmines. So the work is done both to educate and to physically clear. And over the past 20 years, some 30 countries now are clear of landmines, but there's much more to do.
These are incredibly unstable parts of the world, and the treaty outlined that they wanted to get rid of all landmines worldwide by 2025. What chance do we have, and are we on course to do so?
There's 162 signatories now to that Ottawa Treaty, the Mine Ban Treaty. There's some 34 states, including some very large ones, that are not party to that landmine treaty. So if we're expecting to see them gone by 2025, it also implies that countries should not be using them. So that work will go on in tandem with the work to clear. I think the 2025 target is very steep, but it's important that there is a target. And if you look at how those killed and maimed, the numbers have come down by some 2/3 over the past 20 years, it shows that the work can be done. The United Kingdom is a real leader in this. The £100 million we pledged back in April for the work over the next 3 years was just part of a long-term continuing programme of demining. We want other countries to step up and join with us, so it's important that this work continues.
And I suppose many of these mines are in the likes of Iraq, where we've seen the so-called Islamic State group be pushed out in recent months. But it's those kind of groups, I suppose, that have left these mines in the place to essentially create a death trap for anyone living there.
That's quite true, and after the fighting finished in Mosul most recently, after Iraqi security forces had pushed back Daesh there, then it became clear that they had littered the place with mines, with IEDs in order to kill people as they were returning. We immediately pledged more money to try and deal with that problem, because at the same time we want to see those areas stable in terms of power and water and housing supplies and shelter. We have now to take account of the mines. I think groups like Daesh will take no notice of any international treaty. That's why the fight against them must continue and must be intensified to remove their threat to so many people in that region. But there are other states too that need to look at their affairs and make sure they're not using these mines, which they call anti-personnel mines, but don't end up just being a defensive measure against troops, but also have a long-lasting impact on civilians left in the areas, which means they can't use areas for agriculture, for the necessary economy to get going again. That's why this demining work, supported by the government and the British people, is so important.
OK, Alistair Burt, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, still to come, we got all the latest sport. What have you got for us?
Yeah, well, rain in Melbourne has scuppered England's chances, and is one man's reign at Arsenal about to come to an end?
Welcome back. You're watching Sunrise, and Jamie's got all the latest sport for you.
Yes, and typical. Just when we wanted some weather a couple of weeks ago in Perth to rescue England. Didn't come then, but it's come now in Melbourne, and it might have scuppered England's chance of a victory. It forced play to be abandoned on day 4.
Good morning and welcome back. You're watching Sunrise. Coming up, we've got your morning papers with TV presenter and anthropologist Mary-Ann Ochota and director of Voice for Change England, Kunle Olulode. But first of all, the top story, and the UK has endured one of the coldest nights of the year, with widespread freezing conditions and temperatures in the Scottish Highlands dropping to -12. Scotland, the north of England and the East Midlands are now on alert for ice and snow, with disruption expected to road, rail and airports. Let's go live now to Fraser Maud, who's in York for us. And Fraser, it's snowing pretty thick there now.
Yeah, just eased off a little bit in the last few minutes, but it has been pretty steady for the last couple of hours.
You go and warm up. Thanks for the update. 12 people have been killed, including a 1-year-old baby, in an apartment fire in the Bronx neighbourhood of New York City. 15 others were injured. Some are in a critical condition, fighting for their lives. But more than 170 firefighters fought the flames in the 5-storey apartment building near the Bronx Zoo, and it's still unclear exactly what caused the fire. At least 15 people have been killed in a fire that broke out in a restaurant in Mumbai. More than 50 others have been taken to hospital in a serious condition. Apple has apologised after the company was accused of slowing down older iPhones in a bid to entice customers into buying newer models. Apple admitted it had downclocked older model central processing units, but said it did so to reduce the strain on dated batteries and stop the devices from unexpectedly shutting down. It also announced that it would cut the price of a battery replacement for anyone with an iPhone 6 or later and not covered by the Apple Care maintenance plan. Now, bacon lovers will be pleased to hear that the cancer risk in their beloved British fry-up will be slashed next month, thanks to a huge breakthrough in technology. Naked bacon will be the first of its kind to be made without the chemicals which are used to cure bacon and are said to be cancer-causing. The new bacon will be hitting the supermarket shelves in January, and we'll be having a taster in the next hour. Latest figures show that 1 person every minute is admitted to hospital in England because of smoking-related problems. The new information released by Public Health England reveals that smoking kills 79,000 people every year, and for every death, another 20 people have a smoke-related disease. Face-to-face help, stop smoking aids, apps and social media are all available for people to use whilst attempting to quit. Drunk tanks could be rolled out across the NHS to ease the pressure on A&E departments. That's according to NHS England's chief executive. Health bosses will study how services cope with alcohol-related incidents this new year before deciding whether to make the facilities more permanent. Now, forget tying knots and singing around the campfire. Girl Guides are to be given lessons on how to become YouTube stars. Girl Guiding Scotland has confirmed it will offer courses in video blogging, or vlogging as it's better known, which may lead to a merit badge. From West Lothian, Sky's James Matthews has this report.
For more than a century, Girl Guiding has taught skills to boost confidence and aspirations.
Due heed to the dangers of the internet whilst opening up its opportunities. And opportunities there are. Advertising revenue makes the most successful YouTubers millionaires several times over.
That's perfect. Okay.
And that's a badge worth having. James Matthews, Sky News, East Calder.
With us this morning to review the papers are TV presenter and anthropologist Mary-Ann Ochota and Director of Voice for Change England, Kunle Olulode. Very good morning to you both.
Hello. Morning.
What have we got to start with? First of all, online giants facing sanctions over fake news in the Telegraph.
So this is Damien Collins, the chairman of the Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee, who is conducting this investigation into fake news and how big giants like Facebook, like Twitter and Google impacted potentially the outcome of the EU referendum, the Brexit referendum. And not long ago, Facebook and Twitter responded to a different request for information by a parliamentary select committee with this absolutely paltry response that he said was utterly disgraceful. And he's given them 3 weeks now to provide a proper response to his committee hearing. The problem is, if they don't fulfil his request, the government is effectively toothless. We are toothless in terms of any kind of sanctions that we can bring against them. So he's suggesting that we encourage the advertising industry to withdraw business on ethical grounds. That is
but
literally...
it's not going to happen, is
and you
it,
say,
really?
well, hurt them where it hurts, which is in their profits. But the thing is, they're too
big.
Divested, they're too
power.
big. Too many people are reliant on the services that they provide, and it just forces us to question this situation that we're in, where people scrutinise government powers for data collection and data manipulation, and whether the police can check your phone records and things like that. But actually, we're utterly blithe to the really manipulative actions of massive corporations that, because they're not nation state, they're not sovereign parts of the government operating procedures, that they're almost kind of just sitting above all this.
But I suppose the problem is they've got these platforms, social media sites, your Facebooks, your Twitters, and there's so much content on there. How are they going to police exactly what's going in?
Absolutely, that becomes an industry in itself. But I think from my side, the democratic aspect of it is that trying to explain the changes and some of the instability in international politics and domestic politics by explaining it through the interference of these companies, it doesn't really stack up. I've got to be honest. I think the focus for trying to explain it as the manipulation of fake news across platforms like Facebook and Twitter really ignores the fact that there are lots of other things going on in the social space that really need to be scrutinised.
Let's move on now to Jeremy Corbyn, because the Telegraph page 1, they say he's trying to rig the election. Tell me more.
Well, democracy is going to be one of the key themes of 2018, and with that goes a whole series of boundary changes in order to equalise the constituencies of MPs, and it's been led by Chris Skidmore, the Minister for Constitution. By coincidence, Voice for Change, my charity, actually sits on his Democracy Council, newly formed. And he's just making the point that the kind of opposition, soft opposition that's coming from the Labour Party is interfering with the process of making those boundary changes, and he's more or less inferring that it's anti-democratic and undermining British democracy.
But the thing is, in 2010, the Tories didn't help the Liberal Democrats actually, roll out the referendum for proportional representation, which is what this effectively would have done. It would make every single person who can vote in this country have an equal vote with everyone else, because otherwise, if you're part of a huge constituency, your vote counts for less effectively than someone who lives in a constituency where the MP is voted for by you know, 60,000 people rather than 80,000 or 90,000 people. And you kind of think, well, it suits them now, so they're going for it. But fundamentally, they don't care either. They just want to, you know, screw Labour.
Keep talking about politics, but let's talk about Margaret Thatcher and pandas.
Yeah, so this is partly about pandas. A whole raft of documents from the 80s and 90s have been declassified, some about John Major, some about Margaret Thatcher. So there's a kind of a whole tranche of fun and slightly disturbing stuff that has come out about Margaret Thatcher and her kind of years in power. One of which is that she refused to travel to America with a panda in her Concorde or in
Not
Concorde.
surprisingly.
Well, it could have been an opportunity to the suggestion from her aides was that this would be a really fantastic way for her to sort of showboat the special relationship that we have with the US. And she said that she didn't want to travel with a panda and it was a stupid idea.
Well, they are an endangered species, no?
Well, not only that.
Partly because she didn't give it a lift.
I think that in terms of the association of pandas and failed politicians, such as Richard Nixon and Ted Heath, it wasn't something I could see Thatcher, you know, really getting involved in at all. But I think what's interesting about it, obviously, is the ramifications in terms of what it meant for the establishment. But I think it's perfectly reasonable that she actually turned it down.
OK, let's talk about plastics now. Telegraph, page 17. And the rising tide of plastic waste threatening Bali's tropical beaches. Of course, we got our campaign going.
Well, that's
we've got a lot on that.
That's right. The epitome of the paradise island is Bali. But it appears that over recent years, the whole situation is turning into a bit of a nightmare, with something like 100 tons of waste appearing on some of their key beaches.
Terrifying.
And this is also something that links in with, I think, people's reaction to the BBC's Blue Planet 2 series, where they saw the impact on the oceans and marine life in terms of plastic, and it's undermining.
Well, you get these beautiful beaches in India as well, and they're just blighted with rubbish and plastic.
The thing that concerns me about these stories and about Blue Planet, though, and that kind of thing, is that it kind of fetishizes the problem. It makes it sort of a tragic thing that we go, oh God, that's terrible, and you read it and you look at the awful pictures and you see the, you know, the seabirds with bits of ring pools around their necks, or the, you know, albatross that have died because they've eaten all the shiny coloured plastic. And you're sitting there reading this or scrolling on your phone with your single-use plastic coffee cup in your hand whilst eating your takeaway or your kind of take-out lunch in its plastic packet, and you dump it in the bin. You go, oh, that's terrible, I can't do anything about it. You put it down and get on with your life.
Yeah.
And actually, if we care,
well,
you know, it's look at the canal, look at the bit of pavement that you walk your kids to school along. You don't need to go as far as Bali to see this problem.
But the suggestion is that it's
I'm going to have to stop you there because we're going to have to take a break. We've got plenty more to discuss, and that's coming up after the break. Stay tuned.
Fly tipping.
Yeah.
Oh, they're dumping it in.
They're dumping it.
Well, let's continue with this morning's papers. We're delving into them, and I think we're starting now on The Sun. Page 21, sounds like a nice story too. Racehorses in love.
OK, so this is one of those stories that they wheel out at this time of year, where actually there's quite a breadth of stories in the papers today. But, you know, half the journalists are on holiday. You know, these are a few that are in the back file. But I just think it's a really sweet story. There's a racehorse trainer called Nicky Henderson who had two horses, one called Simon Sig, and one Triolo Darlane. And they're two male gelded horses. They're both prize winners, and they kind of fell in love with each other.
It's like Black Beauty.
It's really beautiful. They hung out, they'd groom each other, they'd eat together, they'd walk around the fields together. But then in November last year, Simon Sig had a fall and had to be put down.
Oh, no.
And his little pal is heartbroken.
That's a bit of a disappointing ending.
Yeah, it's not a happy story, because poor old Triolo hasn't found a new buddy. He's just wandering around the field on his own.
There we go. They need to get him a new friend.
I know.
Well,
sad, isn't it? But beautiful.
It is. Well, let's move on, shall we? Because there's a story in the Daily Mail, page 23, why a bad boss, Kunle, is better than a Jekyll and Hyde. Explain.
Well, it seems it's a university study on people preferring consistency over unpredictability in working relationships. You might question, well, what does a university institution know about the world of work? I have questions myself on that one, but I think that it's about temperament, and people would prefer somebody who they can actually, I suppose, get the measure of and work out their moods, rather than somebody who's completely off the hook.
Food for thought. Thanks to both of you for joining us this morning. Appreciate your time. Let's get a check on the weather now, shall we?
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Your top stories coming up here on Sunrise, including one of the coldest nights of the year across the UK. And now there are warnings of heavy snow in the north of England. We'll have more on that and plenty of other stories coming up after the break.